Cool. So, hey, ladies and gentlemen. So I got my buddy Joel Jacobson with Evolved Ministry. He is amazing. If you guys check out his channel, you will see we have a lot in common. And the reason I have him on today is because I'm expounded by his wisdom and his research and the time that he's put in and evolving his soul, you know. And so pretty much, brother, I want you to pretty much explain where you started having the awakening of evolving your soul that really mattered to you about your testimony, how you started your journey.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me here first. I'm really grateful. It's been a long time since I had a chance to actually share and kind of explain about myself. People see my videos online and they get a snippets of what I know, snippets of who I am. And I've had some people come forward towards me and with nasty comments of like, they think they know who I am just by watching my videos, and I think it's impossible. So I want to clear things up. Some people just don't know my backstory, my background. And basically, I was born and raised in Israel. I was there all my life until the age of 25, when I decided to relocate to California. I had enough with the Israeli mentality. I just wanted to get out, but there was a process of actually awakening to that point and of transforming my life to that direction. And it first started with astral projections. When I was in my military service, right after high school, I had like 2 weeks of just vacation, although it wasn't really vacation. We had the second Lebanon war that erupted. So I drafted into the army when we were in this war, and went through basic training. I was part of the anti-aircraft Air Force field, like that part of the Air Force, and specializing with monitoring the skies over Syria, Lebanon, and then later on, I also relocated down to the south to basically observe and monitor the skies over Gaza Strip.
Wow.
Now, what happened when I was in Gaza Strip, and that was like half a mile away from my base was the border with Gaza Strip, and they would launch rockets from Gaza into neighboring Israeli settlements, and my mission was to classify those rockets because the radar that system that I was using could classify them, and then raise the alarm system. So I had a protective mission there. What happened was that during that period of time, I learned from my brother about astral projection. He started experimenting and he had success, and I became curious because he's my twin brother. I was like, if anything, I can trust him with anything he'd tell me. Like, he wouldn't lie to me. He would confide with me anything such as that. So I began reading some of the books that he was reading about astral projection, also like Robert Monroe's Ultimate Journey.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really mind-opening, just the idea of astral projection being possible. But it was only when I really had a breakthrough, and it was after this shift during the night at the base. We had this war that erupted, and Israel was going into Gaza to clear up a lot of the mess that was going on, and I had to be in a bunker, at least covered, in order to not get hit by any mortar rockets that Hamas, the terrorist regime, would send to our base. So I ended up having my first astral projection after a 6-hour shift during the night. I just like got out of my shift, walked down a few steps. Here was my sleeping bag, because we were sleeping right outside of where we would do our shifts. And I would just collapse, and I felt myself melting. You know those times when you wake up, you like stay up all night long, and then by the time you go to bed, you just feel yourself melting through the floor. Right. And so I did. And what happened next was I found myself in a dream in a dream, I also kind of had friends around from the army. They were laughing, but I was about to head through these double doors. I collapsed to the ground, and realizing nobody's noticing me, nobody's coming to help me, just laying down there in my dream, motionless. And then suddenly I felt this ripping out of my body in the dream world. So it's basically me leaving this body within within the dream world, but then being blasted without being able to see anything, blasted somewhere. And at some point I was like, I'll open my eyes to see where I'm at. And I open my eyes, I'm gliding over this base at night, and I reach this shed, and I go through this shed. I feel the metallicness of it, like the sensation of astral projection is way more loose, more than lucid. You know, people have lucid dreams where they can control things, but this is where you can remember every thought that you have, every feeling, every sensation. It becomes so real, just like this real, but even more real than what most people experience here.
Wow.
So I ended up getting to have this really ultra HD experience that once I woke up from it, I was blown away. But that kind of launched me to the idea of, if this is possible, if I can have more experiences, what does that mean? And so I ended up pursuing it more and realizing that there's certain conditions that can be met in order for me to have more astral projections. I did had more astral projections where I would actually be able to separate myself, be inside my body, but feel this electromagnetic field around me, this body, and then be able to kind of like roll out of bed, but then magnetically I'm back in my body, jump into the middle of the room, I'm back in my body. And I would experiment with these things. I would also feel entities inside a room observing me. At the beginning, I felt like they were negative. Like, why is there somebody around me observing me? So that was a process. I even made a video about that, about this idea of smiling energy, of how when I just converted my thinking, that I was initially thinking that there was a negative person or negative entity outside of me, I smiled at it, suddenly the whole energetic field that I had shifted.
Wow.
And I felt calmer. And I even asked this entity to help me. I felt two hands grab me and try to help me out. But initially, my astral projections back then were not as long-lived. I didn't really have long ones.
Right.
I did have one that was pretty long, very impressive one that I did also detail in a video. But it was only later on when I left Israel and moved to California that I decided to experience more astral projection. I was very much interested to go into energy work. I found this online school that's no longer there, but I joined it initially because of astral projection, and he was offering also telekinesis and psychokinesis and stuff like that. But that wasn't really interesting to me. Wasn't really interested in that. Right. So I was doing astral projections again back in San Francisco. I was living there in the middle of the city, and I had incredible experiences there too. I mean, I had experiences where I would lay in bed motionless for a period of time, and then I would start. My girlfriend at the time, she left to work, but then suddenly I hear somebody come through the door, go to the side of the bed, her side of the bed, start rustling with papers, and I'm like, wait a second, is she back? Is she noticing that I'm in bed? So I open my eyes and I look to my side and I see that nobody's there.
Wow.
So I realized that there is a multi-dimensional, the multiverse. There's dimensions upon dimensions. There's also realities upon realities. So what I was experiencing could have been like the range and scope of knowledge that I have is to a certain degree, but it's not far exceeding. Like I don't know it all.
Right.
Something I want to make sure that people understand, that I'm still learning. I'm still understanding things. Like I'm still following Michael Grubb. I'm still learning from Evolved Ministry. I'm still learning from all kinds of different sources to kind of complement it. I want to understand. And so I learned a lot about the process of astral projection to the degree where it's not spontaneous and unconscious, but it's actually can be done through a scientific process. Wow. Where you can do it again and again and again if you get this certain method down. And yeah.
Wow, that's amazing, very amazing. I like it. So what you were saying about getting the method down, is it more of a like a brainwave state?
Well, the brainwaves are only a mirror or a representation of this state of concentration and calmness that you're at. The brain is only a physical apparatus. It's made of, it's in this physical dimension. It's housed within this skull. Right. It's producing electrical waves. And when I was researching breatharianism, I came across this woman called Jasmuhin. Her book about breatharianism had a lot to do with brainwaves. Yeah. Of how people normally operate in a beta brainwave. And this beta brainwave is fast oscillating. It's like very fast oscillating. But then once you start, taking a deep breath or listening to the birds and closing your eyes, you start slowing that beta brainwave into a slower alpha wave. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so what initially happens is that the brain waves are mirroring sections of your brain that are operating in quicker basically rates. Okay. Of electrical rates. So we're talking here about brain wave is you're thinking a lot of thoughts all at the same time, or very fast, busy mind. Right. Restlessness. People who are restless have so many thoughts going through their mind that they're trapped within that place. They're cut off from the rest of the body, and they're operating from the neck up, and they're too trapped within their heads. And so that could be a problem because you're disconnected from the rest of yourself. A whole thing of you, the whole body has to work in a symphony, right? Together. Because if you're just dominant in one area of yourself, it can be, it could stagnate your process. Yeah. People who get too stuck with intellectual reasoning and knowledge can, bind the doors of their heart. They forget about this other part of them that needs to also be take part within this process, within projection of thought, or within anything that you want to do within your life, if you want to be successful or to be actual, to meet your goals. So there's that aspect. But when you're coming back to the beta brain waves, when you slow it down to alpha, the rate of thought is slower. And we're talking about in a general sense, because the brain itself, when you look at it with brain waves, there's certain cortical areas of the brain that are operating in alpha, some are in beta, some are in gamma, some are in theta, some are in delta. The idea is that overall, you want to unify the whole brain to operate in unison to basically I guess orchestrate together things. If you have an intention, you don't want your intention to be interfered and take you in different directions. You want to have everything unified. That's why meditation kind of balances things out and calms things down. But in the sense of brainwaves, you're slowing yourself down to alpha, which gets you to access deeper fields, gets to cut off a lot of the periphery information, so you can now, reverse the consciousness from flowing outwards, matter identification, into spirit identification, reverse the outpouring flow of energy so you can reverse it back inwards and start feeding yourself.
Wow.
Most people are so distracted and so consumed by everything that's happening around them that they're too busy, and they then get really easily triggered by any stimulus surrounding their environment, that when they start to try to meditate, they have a hard time concentrating and shutting off their monkey mind that is has a habit of being busy. And that habit is one of the problems, is that if you develop a habit of just like constantly being busy, then you are developing this personality, this rate of operation. This
Right.
is who you are, this is how you operate, and this is what you're dominant with. It's just same thing. If you're dominant with thinking from your neck up, only from analytical and reasoning and logic, you forget the rest of the part of you, the feeling, the being, the part of the communication, the actual relations with another person or another object or another animal or a tree. There's portions of you that can be also part of the experience, but if you're only dominant from one side, then you're lacking at the other, and that could lead you to the problems where people, they want to have success with psychokinesis or with astral projection, but they're too imbalanced because there's parts of them that are more dominant, meaning that they're stronger. But if there's stuff that's stronger while there's stuff that's weaker, you want to go to the weak things, weak portions of yourself, find them out, dissect them, and then strengthen them. Because it's kind of like having a chain, and each piece of the chain has to be strong to hold the chain together. If there's one piece that is not strong, that it's weak, the chain can break.
Right.
And so that's eventually, you're talking about you as a whole. If somebody finds out a weakness within you, they can then hit at it again and again and again. And Michael would normally say, like, when he's in the ring, because he was a cage fighter and he would teach cage fighting, that people, the opponent will find a weakness and then will try to chew and hit at that weakness, because then that's the easiest way to bring you down. And so overall, we're talking about the process of self-mastery. I mean, self-mastery for me actually really, really began because of nutrition. And me wanting to understand and to help people initially. However, when I tried to help people relying on secondhand or third-hand knowledge, I ended up having a frustrating situation. That situation was a customer came to the store, was working at this store as a storekeeper, but also supplying customer service. And they were asking me, what's the difference between one white sugar and this other type of sugar called demerara sugar? Yeah. And I said what I was taught. I was told that white sugar is bad because it's bleached. Mm-hmm. And so this customer looked at me in a funny way. I'm like, this doesn't sound right. And so me not knowing for sure, because I've never seen the research, I was never really thoroughly taught, or I never really looked into it, or just reiterating things as a robot, that I realized I was ignorant, that I was kind of stupid. So I didn't like the feeling. I went back home and I started researching, found out that white sugar is not bad because it's bleached. It's bad because of all kinds of other reasons, but sugar altogether is not a bad thing. It's just processed sugar is empty carbs. It's devoid of cofactors. It doesn't have minerals, vitamins, enzymes that assist it in the assimilation within the organism. Right. Nothing grows. Okay, no bacteria would grow on white sugar. You leave white sugar outside, no real microbe would go and sit on it or live on it, because
Yeah.
it's not. It's too corrosive. It's a crystal. It's only if you take a certain amount of it in a concentration in water, mix it up, and then you have bacteria starting to grow on it, because first of all, they have the medium of water, but also the concentration is not lethal. And the problem with certain diets out there is that people don't understand chemistry and how chemistry affects the body. And that's things that I've been learning since then, to understand how, we have a body that is made out of chemicals. These chemicals, of course, there's other schools of thought that would talk about how we're basically more electromagnetic beings, but we're also digital. There's a digital reality, but underlying it is that the physics of our place here, as far as we have been working with, and is we all do work with, is that there's chemistry. You put something in your body, you'll have a response. And so the issue is that our bodies can become restless through a sugar rush,
Right.
or through certain types of other meals, that it can make our mind restless as well. And a body that's restless creates a restless mind. A restless mind doesn't really allow you to easily and smoothly shift from one state of consciousness to another. And I realized that more when back in 2016, when I went to Israel. I left California. I decided to go on this little trip. I went to my parents' place and I stayed there for a little while, and I decided to do this 8-day breatharian process. I was really interested in breatharianism. I learned about breatharianism from this book called Man's Higher Consciousness, but also from reading about it from Jasmine Hind, I was saying before, when in relations to the brainwaves. And I realized through the 8-day process, you go through a diet, you just drink juices, and then for 2 days, and then 3 days you dry fast. And then the next other several days you return back to eating, but mostly drinking. And then at the end of the day, the 8th day, you eat fruit.
Yes.
So one thing that I noticed very much from it was that after the dry fast, I am the depth of a meditation that I would be able to get to was like I would be able to instantaneously, so quickly, to go deep, like jumping to a deep pool, go very deep into a meditation, and it would be very smooth. And I haven't experienced it like that since coming back to eating, or even before. It was very noticeable. So, I mean, when it comes to, when you're talking about brainwaves, your initial question, our bodies are able to operate to a certain capacity. Right. That's something that I've understood. We have a certain amount of voltage in us. We have a certain amount of capacity, but what happens throughout our life, our choices that we make, can actually influence the quality of our thoughts that are mirrored as brainwaves.
Wow. And it ends up producing our reality, right?
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, the brainwaves themselves are just, electrical outputs. Right. That's all it is. It's a rate of output. It's just, our instruments or technological instruments can measure that. But when it comes to reality creation and engineering, as Michael would call, you're talking about the idea that the whole environment around you is made out of light. Right. And I mean, what is light? Michael has described it to me as light is a translator of information. Yes. Looking behind you, I see all these ones and zeros. Right. That's like the digital aspect of information, because behind a packet of information you have numbers. That's how computers actually work. But there's this whole fabric that is like, if you have a monitor computer, you have first the monitor that displays the light, that shows you what it can be converted, and actually show you a hallucination of thought, of a hallucination of colors and thoughts and stuff like that, and constructs and shapes. But you have the actual machine itself that does not have a monitor. It's just parts moving and reading and communicating, wires, and they're basically communicating information, reading information, writing information, reading information, writing information, communicating information here and there. And so we're talking about a universe outside of us. If the computer is a reflection of actually this technology of the body, like the brain being a computer, or the nucleus of every cell is like a computer, or the organism itself is very much calculative, and can the membrane has receptors that can detect its environment. We can then adapt to our environment because information comes in through the receptors, even through the eyes, through the ears, through the tongue, through the olfactory nerves, goes into the brain then processes it. But then what actually takes that processing information and displays it on the screen of the conscious mind? The mind itself is also something that calculates, but it's mostly a displaying. It's a display apparatus, I guess, or like a device, you can say. But it's kind of like having a screen in front of you that actually displays light. And so we're talking about everything here is made out of light. Another thing is that we're talking about how light is actually sentient and alive. That we at Evolve Ministry, we point out to the whole idea of the experiment of the, what was it? The double slit experiment.
Yes.
You're familiar with that? Yeah. So we're talking about how, you have an observer observing light, and then light behaving differently according to the observation. You see that also in astral projections or in dreams themselves. In dreams, you don't really notice the morphing environment, but when you're in an astral projection, you actually see whiffs of smoke of how the environment just whiffs and just morphs in front of you from one scene to another, and you're entirely awake and aware of this phenomenon. You're like, this is actually happening, but you keep on writing with it. Otherwise, you could break the connection and wake up.
Yep.
There's fail-safes in us that once we're become too awake of the situation, if we create fear within us because of it, it's because a certain part of us is still connected through a silver cord to our body. We can generate adrenaline to put us in a fight or flight mode if we're in fear, and to then sever the connection and bring us back into the body as a mechanism of protection.
Wow.
Yeah, that's why astral projection, you really, or not only astral projection, also psychokinesis, calmness is a foundation of self-control.
Right.
It's very simple as that. That's why restlessness is something that destroys self-control.
Yes.
If you're restless, you can't really be in control. People who are restless, they can be easily manipulated into fear, into believing certain things. That's why the media injects fear a lot, because they want to throw people's balance off, throw them off their calmness, off their self-control, so then they can inject all these auto-suggestion subliminal messages to route and divert and direct certain minds into directions that they want them to go.
Yeah, the mind control by the media to program their subconscious mind in those areas if they're not in meditation or
Mhm.
or being aware. Another thing, how does the chakras or endocrine glands unite to being a universal self-mastery practitioner, evolving your soul? How does those battery packs operate? How do you get to, I guess the word could be ascend on the ladder or evolve your soul?
Mm.
Or a great breakdown that would relate with meditation, endocrine glands, and I guess you can answer that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a very interesting topic because when it comes to chakras, chakras literally mean wheels of energy in Sanskrit. However, when it comes to chakras, as they're being described as these wheels of energy, they're described as these astral components. But they're the astral components of what? Of the endocrine system, because to every chakra,
Yeah.
wheel of chakra, energy vortex, there is a gland that they're associated with. Think of yourself as an electrical being. You know, you have energy that enters into your body, crucially from the medulla oblongata. It's called a switchboard, but it enters and goes up into your brain to power it up, electrical information, astral information. It also goes down your spine, and as it goes down the vertebrae, it also goes into the innervation. You know, like your spine itself, it has the spinal cord, but it has also branches,
Right.
um, nerve branches that then go and innervate as a plexus within the heart, within the lungs, within the pancreas, within the adrenal glands. Um, if you knew that the heart itself is only a third muscle but 2/3 nerve,
Mm.
you'd understand that, you know, most of our organs, they're a complex system, configuration of cells that all work together to, first of all, connect the organ to the brain,
Right.
but also you know, the plexuses themselves, they help as a hub to actually think independently. I had once this vision during a dream that reoccurred once, one after the other. Like it happened once, I saw it, and then it happened again because I think I was meant to see it again to actually really understand that it was what was being shown, and felt like I was underneath the sea in like water. And what I saw was a figure of a person, but it was a translucent person, and his chakra, I saw his chakras, at least these astral counterparts, and it looked like heads, like a purple head, a blue head, you know, green head, and so on and so forth. And I think the idea was that it had to explain to me that every center is an intelligence in its own. It's able to um, receive and compute information at a different level, different phase, different energies capacity.
Yeah.
So we as a whole, we receive information from all wavelengths of our environment. We are electromagnetic beings receiving all information, and then basically this whole apparatus is able to take these bits of information and complete a whole experience for the avatar to best navigate its surroundings.
Okay.
However, what happens through diet is that certain diets can lead to the colon being backed up, the gastrointestinal tract to being too acidic and too sluggish, that then most people, they don't have very strong awareness of their emotions. And instead they have very extremes. They have extreme happiness, then they go to extreme sadness or extreme like depression and all these things because their diet keeps on throwing them off. But they also don't really feel the immense joy and ease and smoothness of the environment around them because they're too dense. They're full of dense materials. They're full of dense consciousness. Each time you eat something, you're actually eating consciousness.
Right.
You're merging with something. You're actually taking something that grew somewhere, like a fruit would have grown on a tree. What a beautiful environment it lived. It saw beautiful sunrises and beautiful sunsets, had beautiful bees and birds and animals come through it. But then you have, animals, they had some good lives here and there, but then you have the industry where, some animals have a very appalling existence. And so they're full of a consciousness that only knows that existence. And when you eat it, most people think that they get energy from the proteins or from whatever's in it, but essentially you're really getting that adrenaline rush.
Right.
You're getting a rush of energy that is false. That's why the same thing with coffee. People get a rush from it, because what coffee does is that it increases the frontal lobe, but it also triggers the adrenals to go into a fight or flight mode. And it's a false energy because of that essence. It's not real energy. It's going to eventually, you're going to burn your adrenals. That's why most people who stop having coffee, they have withdrawals, but they also have these sagging eyes here that depict that the adrenals and the kidneys are not malfunctioning, but just like weak. They're weak because of the condition that they were too, if you develop a dependency on a substance to give you a certain experience, like a high, like an energy, your other organs are going to become weak because of a process of innervation, the process of, you're giving the body a chemical boost that eventually is going to weaken these organs that are not actually able to produce their own processes to create the real energy. They become lazy, and because they become lazy, they lose their capacitance, their actual level of work.
So they will have a disruptance in their electromagnetic field in the area over here, in that gland area where the kidneys are. You see the merging points connect to the kidneys, where the body will present a countenance upon it. So pretty much the way that food works on the nutrient table would actually be dependent upon the consciousness, the way that the consciousness perceived information. Then the more innocent it would be if it perceived everything more through unconditional love and how it was sourced, right? And if the animal or product, whatever we ate or consumed, had a life where it was around aware of a lot of fear, and it took a lot of fear in and it encoded its DNA. So when we eat it and consume it without changing the elements through consciousness ourselves, through assumption, then we'll actually be we are what we eat, and then we will end up having these tension in our body and end up reacting in those ways, pretty much getting programmed by that data, being unaware of the education. Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's
yeah.
very important.
Yeah. Well, when you're initially talking about like the endocrine glands,
right?
A lot of people are very infatuated with the pineal gland because they want to bypass all other work and go straight into, the experiences of altered states of consciousness and, the amazing experiences that you can have within the astral, or like opening your third eye and then suddenly you see a dark room turn into light, and then you can see whatever else you could see from that experience. But because of this infatuation, people lose touch with the idea that every other gland in their body is also supportive.
Right.
There's a reason why the pineal gland is calcified, and calcification is happening for most people because of their diets. Why is an organ of the body receiving high amounts of calcium? Why? Why is that? What is the mechanism that actually leads to calcium being taken out of tissue or out of the bones and placed into glands. Why? Why is that? And me as a nutritional investigator, I wrote an article about it, or about the idea of, osteoporosis, of how, acidosis is this process of, have you ever heard the word acidosis?
No, the one that goes acidosis fructialosis. That one long word.
Yeah.
Totally different, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Again, when we go back to the idea of, our bodies are made of water primarily.
Yeah.
I mean, I made 2 courses on developed ministry about water and physiology.
Right.
It was for a good reason, because I realized, water is our primary matrix. 99% of the atomic weight of the body is water. 99% of the atomic weight. However, 70 to 80% of water by weight is what we're made out of. It depends too, but the idea is that water is the universal solvent.
Yeah.
Any chemical, you take rock and you start chipping away at it, and then you add it, into the water. You're going to test it with a pH strip. You're not going to get pH of 7. pH of 7 is the middle where water sits. Right. But if you start adding acidic substances in it, it's going to make it more on the acidic side. Gastric juices in our stomach are down to 2 pH. And that's because they really need to be at that pH in order to break down protein. However, you also have, battery acid, which is about 1 pH. Our skin is about 5.5 pH. But there's all these different things. Coffee is 3 pH. Coca-Cola is 3 pH. I don't remember what else is down in those acidic ranges. But you do also have alkaline substances, where you find fruit gives you alkalining. You put it in your mouth, you then test your saliva, you have more alkalinity. Same with baking soda. Drink some baking soda or swish it around your mouth, you test your saliva in your mouth, you find that your pH has risen. Went from acid to alkaline because of the baking soda, sodium bicarbonate.
Yes.
Your body is actually is able to create sodium bicarbonate, baking soda, to neutralize acids. That's why when you have food that exits the stomach, which is acidic, goes into the small intestines, in order to avoid that burning of the small intestines by the acid that just exited the stomach, the pancreas shoots sodium bicarbonate at that food in order to neutralize the pH. But we're talking about, again, the idea of pHs, and we're talking about most minerals are very alkalining. So we're talking about calcium being a very alkalining element. We have lots of calcium in a calcium phosphate matrix within our bones, teeth. Right. We also have 24% of the bone matrix is sodium, but there's all these different minerals combined into it in order to create this very strong, tough matrix. However, what happens to people when, their teeth become brittle, they become softer, and then, they're more prone to decay and tooth cavities and stuff like that. Or people break their bones more easily, or, their bone density is very low. It's a displacement of calcium outside of the bones into other tissues of the body. But why is that? It's because acidosis, when we go back into the pH, when your blood, and your blood has to be always in a range of like slightly more than 7, more alkaline. It should be like 7.5, 4, 7.8. What happens when you start eating something and that pH suddenly goes down? That pH suddenly goes down to such a low level, that it could create, because it becomes too acidic, that it creates a situation called acidosis. And acidosis can cause immediate death in an organism, because the blood, if it becomes acidic like that, acid, like battery acid, you pour it on your skin, it burns. Okay, you throw up gastric juices, it burns your teeth, burns your mouth. Okay, so in order to neutralize that, inside the blood vessels, what happens is that the body takes minerals like calcium and just like puts it into the blood in order to immediately, quickly cut off the burning, just like neutralize it.
Wow.
Okay. However, that calcium then sits there and needs to be mopped up and removed in order to be brought back to the bones or back to the soft tissue. Some people who have like aging itself is a process of the loss of connective tissue. Connective tissue is lost because of calcium displacement. Acidosis, because the tissues become acid, or the fluids around them become acidic, and they have to remove calcium in order to neutralize it. And then through a process of years and years and years of abusing this system, keep on eating something that's acidic and then relying on your system to, protect you and to recover, you end up degrading your instrument of this instrument of biological intelligence.
Right.
So there's more components to the whole idea, but when we go back to the pineal gland, calcification happens because people are eating things that are way on the acidic side, creating acid-forming foods that leave an acid ash after combustion in the cells, that the cells the tissues around them, the fluids around them become so acidic that they have to neutralize that to not to burn. Tissues that burn get damaged. Damaged tissue can lead to degeneration, inflammation that can, if it's not solved, it can lead to degeneration of tissue, which we do see in society.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah, I'm sure you know somebody who has had cancer or has cancer, or people who've had, arthritis or tuberculosis or rheumatoid arthritis. What else? Atherosclerosis and such.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the organism itself, it's influenced by our choices. The law of karma is real. You're going to eat something, you're going to disturb the fluid homeostasis. And when we're talking about actually all the endocrine system, it's very much works in tandem in order to process information, but also balance the system after processing information. Like the kidneys themselves, they have the adrenal glands that sit right on top of them. And these adrenal glands, they work as like brains, as a brain system for the kidneys. They are very much involved in neurotransmitter information, sending information to create the contractions of the peristalsis, the movement of food throughout the digestive tract and colon. Right. But what happens when the adrenal glands become weak? A lot of people have adrenal weaknesses, and because of that, they're not able to filter their blood or their lymphatic system properly to get rid of waste properly, but also they can become constipated because the adrenals, they can become weak. They can become weak because of constant stress and distress, too much fear from the media, from their life, that they become weak. And so there's these glands of our bodies that just can become weak because of external stimuli, external events that influence us. However, when we go back to us as ourselves, when we reverse the outpouring energy and bring it back inwards, we realize that meditation is such a crucial tool that we have in order to shut down our mind from all the beliefs that we have, all this stuff that we believe that affect us, and realize that we're beings that can talk to light,
Yeah.
talk to the electromagnetic components of our entire body or the external environment, and start having a conversation with it and talking with it. First listening, understanding what's happening with the environment, to then realize what's its condition, what's its state. Is it flowing or is it stagnant? If it's stagnant, how can I create flow again to create more harmony, introduce the energy to get the circulation to happen, in order for cleansing to happen, in order for nutrients to happen. Just like we breathe in oxygen in order to bring in this crucial component, oxygen, that fuels every cell. You create circulation in order to not only get oxygen in, but also to drive it deeper into the organs that normally don't have much movement. A lot of people don't realize that during the night, when they sleep 6, 8, 10 hours, depending on who, what, where, you're sitting and you're letting your body just sit. And what happens in nature when a body of water sits?
You decrease.
What's that?
You deplete.
Yeah. In a sense, yeah, that's true. You deplete. Well, think of a body of water in nature that just sits, develops algae, develops, disease problems. Okay, creates an ecosystem that is not healthy. People who don't get up in the morning and exercise, bringing oxygen and moving it deeper into their organs, they don't really nourish themselves. They sit in this pool, and then they're sluggish and can't really function in the morning. Their minds can't really work yet, so they have to have another half an hour of just getting ready. But in reality, if you an optimal avatar, like I used to do this. I used to wake up from a dream saying to myself, I was not dreaming. I'm just waking up right now and I'm ready to go out.
Wow.
Like out to the next thing to do. And so as I practiced this during waking life, it started translating also to dream and also to astral projections, where I became, the separation between this world and other worlds was just a separation of my perception, my perspective on things.
Wow.
So perspective itself, influences our endocrine system. It affects our bodies. We hold too many negative thoughts about ourselves or about others that we also clench and hold within our own bodies, that obstruct our circulation, obstruct our energy flow. And therefore, the endocrine glands, the thyroid, many people who have thyroid issue have mostly a lot of problems with speaking up, talking. Okay. There's a good reason. It's so associated and close to this place, close to the vocal cords.
Right.
But, there's all these other weaknesses people have, and that do translate into psychological issues. You can look at a person and observe them, observe how they walk, observe how they talk, observe how they behave and how they handle themselves in front of people or on their own. And you realize that through the process of your observation, you're getting information about them. This information is their entire being expressing themselves, and you can learn what strengths they have and what weaknesses they have. When it comes to the chakras, we can't see them because we have a limited range of perception. The body here is calibrated to see a very small percentage of the entire electromagnetic spectrum. Just a spectrum of light is very small compared to what's out there. That means that everything that's below red, that goes into infrared, microwaves, radio waves, we can't see, but then that means that there's information out there. If we're made of information and we can only see ourselves to the degree of only the visible light, if we would be able to see into the infrared radio waves or into the you know,
Right.
ultraviolet X-rays, what will we see about ourselves?
Yeah, that's
What
right.
will we see about our environment? We'll get information that could radically change the way we behave, the way we think, the way we treat people. And so eventually, you know, as much as we want to understand these ideas of like biology, chemistry, physiology, and anatomy, these are very crucial in order to improve yourself as a practitioner. But at the end, the most important thing is to, and you were saying before, is becoming more loving. You know, unconditional love is a very important aspect of our evolution, because it is, you know, that key that opens all locks, that,
Right.
you know,
This
connects
right
us
here.
together.
That's the key that opens the lock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There
I
you
like
go.
I like how you were saying as we're going out and we're aware of and we're listening to the nature and we're seeing it stagnated.
Mm-hmm.
Our job as a life-giving inner identity, we get to discern what's going on, and it's up to us if we want to circulate that area and bring movement in that area. And just by being aware of what's going on, we're already connecting to give life. And there's a good part of the karma as well. And we're just doing it for a mutual benefit because of who we are. And it's fun to walk in our identity. I love the
Mm-hmm.
way you put it. You put it in such a way where it's actually so practical. With the words that you use is so important. Your grammar, it's great. Honor it.
Thank you. I mean, I've spent considerable time improving the way I speak about things. When I was in the army, I was trained as a course instructor,
Wow.
and so I was tasked with taking a course that was already designed, but it was flawed. And so I took it and I rewrote the whole program in 8 months, and
Wow.
took a three-week course and minimized it to 2 weeks, saving the army lots of money.
Wow.
But in a sense also, you know, I taught this course 3 times, and the actual binder that comprises all the information, and also how the teacher could teach the classes, and all the slides that presentations that I created. The person who replaced me told me that, you know, he really didn't have to do anything, because it was just, you know, it was really good.
Yeah.
And so after 3
That's phenomenal.
courses that I taught, I also had people stopping me and saying, you know, you talk like you understand what you're talking about. And I think this is just like, it was a culminative process of, you know, you work hard to grasp information, to compartmentalize it, to say, this is one lesson, it's about a concept. This is a lesson, this is about this concept.
Right.
Then trying to merge them into one larger thing to understand what it all means. You know, at the end, it have to make sense to you. It has to have a larger picture to it. You know, you can get lost in the details
Right.
all you want, but if you get lost in your details, you become your habit is to get lost in the details. It's become too dominant in you, and so you forget to step back and look at the larger picture and assess, how does this fit into the whole picture of who I am, of where I'm at, or what I'm doing, or what the purpose of this life or this universe. Because, you know, even the courses that Michael provides on Evolved Ministry, each one of them stands alone as its own area of study.
Right.
But at the end, you have to step back as a practitioner and say, I learned about physiology, about anatomy, about you know, endocrine glands, chakra system. I learned about meditation. I learned all about this stuff. But now, like, if I step back and I use all that
Right.
in this moment of time to create a connection, to create this, how does this knowledge actually translate to be actually useful?
That's right.
What's the point in me learning this?
Mm-hmm.
And the underlying thing is, you know, the point is for you to better understand yourself. You know, you walk outside and you navigate the environment, you suddenly get, you know, information that doesn't come from your ears, doesn't come from your eyes, doesn't come from your mouth, nose. It comes as intuitive knowledge that comes from deep inside. How do you know what that means, or whether to listen to it or not? You know, there's all of these different aspects of you that you could be getting back in touch with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the first step that I think that benefited me the most is taking my diet seriously,
Uh,
because it's not only what I eat physically, not what I feed myself physically, but it's also what I allow myself into my mind.
that's a real diet.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, you could spend time listening to the media, and they can throw you on like a roller coaster somewhere, but then at the end you're all burnt out, and your adrenals are fatigued, and you've been drinking too much coffee in order to handle the situation and to feel good. And then you abuse yourself with sugar because you're depressed about the situation, and you just want this sweetness to
Wow.
enliven yourself up, but at the end your body crashes. So why do that? Why instead you could discover a lifestyle that is going to help you have energy, that does not take, it's not hard to acquire.
Right.
And I recently learned from this book called The Mucusless Diet Healing System by Arnold Ehret. It was a great book. But the idea was that he gives you a formula, and this formula is vitality equals power minus obstruction.
Okay.
So for you to have vitality, you're feeling
Right.
vital, you have energy to do things, nonstop. But, that energy comes from power. The cells produce this power. They produce it through combustion of oxygen or sugars or whatever source of material they have in their environment that they can initially create a combustion. But there's this energy that they produce, and there's is also the obstructions to that energy. When they want to produce energy, what happens to a cell when it's bathing in its sewage? When it can't really, when the body isn't able to keep up with a lot of its wastes, when it's too congested.
Electron will fall off and turn into a free radical.
Yeah. Well, the idea is that in that sense, when you're talking about that, antioxidants, they're donating their electrical component in order to neutralize an acid, a toxic acid. But what I'm talking about is, what if your cell or your cells, your entire organism is bathing in acids because of a bad diet?
Wow.
Then the cell is always irritated. It's always like twitchy because there's too much happening around it that it's not comfortable in it. So it's restless.
Yeah.
Then it's sending signals to the brain to say, we're restless. How about taking care of us? Because if you're not going to take care of us, we're going to just keep on sending annoying messages to you so you don't stay calm. And then all your experiences as a mind experiencing the body is restless. You're restless. You're pacing back and forward. You don't know how to relax properly. When you try to sit down, you have all these thoughts racing through you. And it's essentially because the body itself is restless. And so when cells are bathing in, a solution that is toxic, they're restless, and you really want to clean that up. And eventually, when the environment is clean, the cells are more comfortable in it. They're more happier. And so they're able to breathe better. It's like the difference between, when it comes to I'm talking about like the universal connection.
Right.
When we're talking about, me connecting to an object and then getting it to spin or to do things, we're talking about, me, it, and the space between me and it, that I'm able to actually see it coherently, really be able to see it and grasp it, to actually be able to focus on it without being, distracted by signals elsewhere, but that my focus is like a laser point, okay? Not sporadic, but laser. That way my energy can go directly to where I want it to go and not miss it and go somewhere else.
Right.
And imagine a cell wanting to talk to another cell, okay? That cell trying to talk to this cell. Between them is fluid. This fluid is full of garbage, bags and bags of garbage, just like piled up. Can the cell talk to the other cell? If
No.
it starts to wave, can the other cells wave back? No, it won't never know that it's actually waving. So it hasn't have a hard time actually receiving signals that there's something trying to communicate to it.
Wow,
And
wow.
so there's an obstruction. What's in the middle is this obstruction to their communication. If you start cleaning up that environment, which also means cleaning up your mind from all these, negative thoughts, these negative tendencies, all these things, you start clearing it up. Imagine a pool between cells that is crystal clean. Like, you go to the mountains and you see a crystal clear lake. You can
Yes.
see to the bottom, you can see the rocks. It's not like all murky. So you can look down, you can see the other side. Imagine cells being able to see each other. One waves, the other waves back, and they can have actual conversation back and forth, but it also can move in the speed of light because there's no obstructions in the way to refract and deflect that light elsewhere.
Wow, that's very vital. And this garbage actually happens to us, like you were saying earlier, by reacting victimized to our external environment, or reacting in such a way where we're letting the external environment, which is actually a reflection of our inner conversations, but telling us who we are without discerning or going within,
Mm-hmm.
So comment, because we had these, and I like we're using that laser beam focus. If we don't have a clear mind and we're trying to focus in on something, and we're going to have this disrupting, and we're going to miss the mark of our goal, aiming everywhere else but it, not getting the reality that we desire.
Yeah, from your experience in the seminar, like you obviously got, your results and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah, how did you feel from it?
Afterwards, in the midst of it, it felt like a dream, because there was experiences that I never experienced before that were tangible to me. Like I felt these electrical pulses inside my hand, and so did my buddy Marcus. And he mentioned it first. At first, I was trying to perceive what was going on, but it came out of his mouth, so I'm like, me too. But then later, Michael was saying for us to move our hands like this, and he's like, "You're feeling that?" I said, "Yeah, it feels like I'm underwater, but I'm in the air." So it was making me high, and we all want to get high, and it was in the most natural way as possible. It was the best ever. It was amazing, such a time. And then when I got back to my house and I made this contraption with the windmills, I felt like I've got an impartation. They say you hang around with multimillionaires, successful people, you become successful. And I've been so hungry to go to the seminar, and still am, to go back and become a student, that I took, speaking of that, I took so much data information in that I acquired inside my cells, that when I went out to it, I just felt like I was still with you guys, just still there. Even I didn't get to see you, but I still felt your presence there as well, in the connection, since we're all one anyway.
Yeah.
But I definitely have a lot of understanding. I actually have a lot of paperwork that I've printed out from the courses that I've been taking, and then I go and I highlight, and I go outside with it, and I'm reading over it. Just very hungry.
Nice.
I've learned a lot.
Good. Yeah. Do you have Michael's book?
I do. I have it right here.
Nice. Good.
Yeah. Here it is. Yep. Right next to me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Love it, man.
That's a good resource. Yeah.
Oh,
I've been when I first moved to Bloomington, about like in October, I was contacted by this guy in Mexico, and he wanted me to come and do a seminar for him and his buddies, whatever. So he also, like, I talked to Michael, and Michael said, if you want to do it, do it. So I decided to go and do it. And this guy actually asked me to create a manual for the seminar. And I didn't have the seminar manual created. So I sat for like a month and a half before this actual seminar, and I wrote a 60-page long manual, which I created into 3 parts. Like discovering the universal connection, then like physiology and the universal connection, and then energy and the universal connection. And they, like, I used it as a base manual that I taught them the 3 days. And after that, they really liked the seminar. It was a really good success. They got to feel the energy. They worked with the windmills. And then they asked Michael to come again. And this was, the first one was back in like December 2017. They asked Michael to come. Michael was contracted by them, so he also got me to come with him. Lisette and Daniel, we all went down to Mexico. And this time I didn't bring my manual because Michael wanted to do his own program to also feel it out and see how it goes.
Right.
But and because of that process, we were actually in a process of, Michael was, before I got to Bloomington, I remember like a month or two before I actually, no, like a month before I actually traveled to Bloomington to relocate there, he was talking about stepping away from Evolve Ministry, giving Evolve Ministry to me and Daniel, because he wanted to focus entirely just on his new hobby of photography. And I was like, what? Really? That's crazy. Like, I don't know. Why would you like a step down from this? This is, this is you. Like, Evolve Ministry is not you, but it's like you're the important, crucial component of this school. Like, how can you leave it? And how could you just leave it in the hands of me and Daniel when, I don't know if I'm trained enough to do this. But when it came and I got this offer to do this seminar, I did it. And after that, because Michael was offered to come back, to come then to Mexico as well to do a seminar. After that seminar, they realized they want to do seminars as well and really kickstart doing seminars since then. And so I feel like I had a very important, crucial role in just like reviving this whole movement and just like getting us into doing, like jumping into the waters of seminars, as much as it's like it was not really moving at the beforehand. It was kind of like, just to think about producing a whole 3 or 4 day seminar, a whole program, having to deal with this or this or that, the logistics.
Wow.
You didn't really want to do this, but then once we did a seminar in Mexico, we came back feeling a lot of like, they weren't really ready for this. We were in an environment where we really didn't get to control all the variables to our satisfaction. Michael wanted to have a program where he could call the shots, where it's going to be, what we're going to do, and not have this nagging older people telling us that they want us to perform and to juggle things for them and to, thank you. And essentially, we wanted our own freedom to produce a program. And so then the idea was to create these seminars and really get to have people to come to our turf and to learn in our environments, with like Bloomington being such a beautiful place, being such a wonderful atmosphere full of lakes, forests, lots of wildlife.
It is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got to see some of that too.
Yeah, I did. I love it. It's full of wildlife. I'm in Florida on the beach right next to NASA, and
nice.
It is. There's a lot of wind because I'm by the water, and I'd like to try to find a dry environment sometime. They have it, of course, but yeah, a lot more wind here. But going over there was different and interesting. I love it.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Man, how long have you been on this path?
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
Good. How long have you known about Michael?
I've known about Michael for about 4 years, and I was just sharing his videos with everybody, just nonstop, left and right. Even my whole family, both my parents, my aunts, my uncles, cousins, and
anyone in your family is also into it.
Yeah, we even watched it together.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
nice.
And they share with their friends as well.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
It's it's definitely something else. It's life changing, you know, dramatically. That's how a big part of your life was changed through Evolved Ministry as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, I am when I moved to California and did my astral projections, you know, I had my own personal story of how I met Michael, and I detailed it in one of my videos of how I met Michael Grubb. And I mean, essentially, I went to this retreat to learn from this one school, this teacher, and Michael was contracted by this teacher to be also part of his teaching staff at this retreat in San Antonio, Texas. So it was back in April 2014. And then when I met him, it was a very important part, you know, crucial point. I was in the process of looking for a teacher that could really teach me um, the realism, the surrealism within the realism. You know, the beyond real, the actual things that I've read in books, that I've seen in movies, or that I have experienced in my astral projections. Somebody who could take me to the next level.
Yeah.
And at the time, you know, I heard him talk about, you know, the Matrix a little bit here, simulations, about energy work and sense, but I got to experience pyrokinesis with him. I got to do some air kinesis, and it was only after that, you know, there was this whole separation between him and that teacher. The school broke apart. Well, didn't break apart, just Michael decided to like withdraw himself and leave because this guy didn't even want to showcase any of his videos, and so or introduce any of his teachings. Wanted to do a lot of like this sales and marketing and trying to believe in this idea of capturing.
I remember when it was going public on Facebook and things like that. Yeah, the back and forth stuff and everything.
Oh yeah,
I see how Michael remained in unconditional love and very mature about the situation. And that's where I was getting my discernment from, because I was checking out the other guy as well, and seeing things. And then me coming from a biblical background, I was seeing the unconditional love and the integrity that Michael has been diligent in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, I mean, growing up, I never came across or was introduced to the New Testament, to the teachings of Jesus Christ. You know, I was born in Israel, where the idea of Jesus was, you know, you don't talk about him. Nobody likes him. We think that he was a false prophet, and da 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 da. So I was born and raised with Judaism, which was focused on the Old Testament, and I got a very deep introduction to that indoctrination. My dad would have me go to synagogue every morning, every Saturday morning, to do the prayers and sit through that until I was 12, 13 years old, when I had my bar mitzvah. And after that, my mom gave me the option of whether I would like to continue it or not, because apparently once you do your bar mitzvah, you are considered a man and you adult. You can choose whether you want to continue or not. This is your path if you want to continue or not. So I decided to stay at home, watch cartoons, and, have breakfast in my PJs. Why would I want to go to synagogue? So I discarded all that. The spiritual component kind of stayed with me, but I was very much indoctrinated into Judaism. So I never really got to see or understand any of Jesus Christ's material. It was only when I started reading into Paramahansa Yogananda's work, and that I read his autobiography of a yogi, and the day that I finished his book, I went to see the documentary that just came out. This was back 2015. So I went to see his documentary called Awake, The Life of Yogananda. And I mean, reading the book was amazing, learning about India from a holy man, getting confirmation that what I intuitively felt and knew throughout my childhood that really exists is actually something that somebody records and testifies that he actually has seen. Saints that can create perfume in objects out in air, a person who can biolocate meditate in one room in his house and then have a separate body to walk around.
Right.
Or, a person who can materialize an orange without seeds and without a cover, like a peel.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, amazing.
It is.
But, I haven't seen it, so how would I know?
Right.
But what he had also authored were a commentary on the New Testament, basically calling it the original teachings of Jesus Christ, the second coming of Jesus Christ, the Christ within you, realizing that Christ consciousness is when people talk about Jesus Christ. Christ is not a name, it's a title.
Right.
And Christ is just like Krishna. Bhagavan Krishna was an avatar who also was endowed with this Christ consciousness.
Yes.
What I understood from the books is that Christ consciousness is this, it's like when you're able to channel the complete and purity of God with no distortion. It's like it's this channel, or it's this connection that when you have this consciousness, Christ consciousness, you don't work from the ego anymore. You work completely from him, and you can create things without any issues or problems. You just do it as is. And so I learned a lot about, I read a good portion of the commentary on the New Testament, and I liked it. It really introduced me to Christ as he is and what he did. It also introduced me to the aspect of between the age of 12 and I guess 30 when he came back, when there suddenly was more information on him. There was a period of time where there was no information.
That's right.
There's this blank slate of what happened in his life. And what Brahmansa Yogananda explains is that there were two different accounts in India, actually in Tibet, in a monastery where people came to this monastery and were introduced to a journal of scripture that was written that describes that Jesus was actually there, that he studied and to perfect himself and throughout those years. And then once he was complete with his training, he made his way into India to preach the teachings of unconditional love, compassion, and then move into Israel and do the same.
Right.
And so I was very, very interested in that. I understood that also the reason why he left at the age of 12 is because at the age of 12, when you're about to be betrothed to another person at that age, back then that was the tradition, he knew his mission. He knew that he could not do such a thing. I guess he was awakened enough to connected to source to really want to do that he needed to escape and leave without being noticed to complete his training before he could complete his mission.
Right. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that's just about like what I know.
Yeah, I love it a lot. Love it so much. It's really good. You have a very open mind with a lot of wisdom, and of course, I like to say it too when people say, of course, we don't know it all. If we did, we would break the matrix, or we'll be on to the next.
Exactly.
Yeah, I used to tell people, I'm like, do you see my hair white like wool? Do you see my eyes like fire and my tongue like sword? Is a description of Christ Jesus in Revelations when it says you have a body like Christ. When they say, yeah, but Nico, you don't know it. Of course not. Do you see me transfiguring right now? No. When we come to the maturity of it all. Mm-hmm. But man, I love this interview a lot. I say this one is definitely one of my favorite videos on my channel. This one right here it's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you, brother.
I'm glad. Thank you for taking the time to ask me questions and to listen. Sometimes I can talk for hours, but I like to not do that, because what's the point? I can fill people's imagination so much, but at the end it's like you have to take what you got and take it apart
Yep.
and really dissect it and really see how it actually helps you and to understand things. Like it took me a while to understand this stuff, about brain waves, about the endocrine system and chakra system. But me giving you the knowledge, it's not really, I'm not giving you any knowledge, I'm giving you information.
Right.
And something that Michael made sure for me to understand, that there's a distinction between knowledge and information. Information is something that you can be given. I can tell you something, my personal experience, that astral projection exists, but that will be only information to you. You would really not know unless you had that experience of astral projection. Once you've experienced, through experience, the actual application process of information, you gain knowledge.
That makes sense.
You are knowledgeable. You are in the know. That way you don't rely on beliefs.
Right, right.
Why rely on beliefs for the rest of your life when there's actually, you can get to a point where you actually have knowledge. You can be in the knowing. You can operate and be able to, decide and choose according to knowledge, not belief.
That's right.
Belief has led a lot of people into mistakes, into doing a lot of, negative and wrong things. But knowledge, you can't really mistake knowledge. It's really hard to take somebody's experience and say that's not real when you personally know for yourself that this is something I've experienced. It's just a matter that, one experience doesn't necessarily give you the knowledge. Like going to doing aerokinesis, you are getting information of how it's done or what to expect. Then you do it, you have the feeling, you experience it. But then, a week passes by, you come back to the windmill and you try it again. You see, wait a second, it's not responding the same way. What's happening? The environment is too dead. How do I kick it started? You go to Michael and ask him, like, Michael, I'm having trouble. Why doesn't it work now? And he's like, well, are you applying the techniques they gave you? Breathing, meditation, movement, exercise, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You say, oh, no, I forgot. And like, well, you actually have to prepare. You actually have to use, the techniques, the method, and then just like, a martial artist that knows how to do the perfect punch after years of training this one punch over and over and over again, you're able to then go up to a windmill and be like, this is a process. I'm just going to now raise the energy, start it up, and there it goes, without much of an effort. And it takes years of practice. It's not something that, the New Age community believes that I'm going to give you this meditation, I'm going to download this information, and then, or you can listen to these subliminal messages, and you'll automatically be able to do it. No, right. It doesn't work like that. No. It's the same thing with all these New Age stuff out there too, where, even like, David Wilcock, I've heard a lot of times he talks about ascension, suddenly we'll have this flash of light from the sun and we'll all be ascending and miraculously we have all these powers and abilities. I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that. What intelligence is going to give you that ability when you don't know how to play nice with the universe? Okay? When you have negative tendencies within you, when you have not really learned enough about the ego to control yourself, to self-control yourself, from, once you have enough voltage from the environment, you can create things in larger degrees, larger scales. But if you have too much power to a corrupt soul, you can go and destroy worlds. I had comments before on my YouTube. I had this one video of mine that had been most popular was hydrokinesis in California on this beach. People would leave me these comments of like, can you make a tsunami? I'm like, why would I want to make a tsunami? Why would I want to use
the comments too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why would you be giving amplitude, power, voltage, use it through your system to create a magnificent large wave, but what are the consequences of your actions?
I know.
And that's what a lot of young minds don't get. and because they think that it's all games and play, that you can, that the people around you are just like there for your entertainment, and you can just kill them off and then everything will be fine, that there's no repercussions. But then when you grow up and you realize there's actually souls, that there's actually souls out there, that you can actually hurt another soul. And if you hurt another soul, you're karmically attached to them until you resolve that. And then you can heal them and heal yourself. Each time you hurt another person, you're hurting yourself.
True.
So
I love it. Even the windmills are a reflection of what we got going on, and if we don't have the proper knowledge and the feeling of what's going on inside of us, then we're gonna have a life full of chaos. You know.
exactly.
The behind it.
That's a bare bones explanation, but it's very actually the most crucial thing. You know, in that simplicity is actually the best wisdom.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, you knowing that is very important.
Yeah, it is. It is. I understand. I understand it big time. A lot of people, when they see what's going on, they don't see the point, and them thinking that alone shows, you know, that they don't know that our thoughts are like currents in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, brother, I love you, man. You're amazing. You're
Thank
awesome.
you. Thank you
Yeah,
for
I definitely honor your work so much, and all that you do. So, oh yeah, also share with people, how do they get in contact with you? And
well, there's several ways. I have my Instagram, my Instagram, JD Jacobson 17, and then I have my Facebook, which is just Joel Jacobson. I have my YouTube channel. You know, leave me a comment if you want. But if you want to contact me privately, those are the avenues. I normally don't share my personal email or my phone publicly, because you know, there's some people out there who could abuse that. So yeah, that's the way they can, you know. And I offer sessions. I like to help people. There's multiple ways that I can help people. I've studied multiple fields of and modalities, to the degree of self-mastery. And so yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks, brother. This is
Thank
awesome
you,
to
dude.
meet you, and I'm excited to see you soon.
Yeah, please. I'm here now in Bloomington, so whenever you come back down here. Wait, where do you live?
I live in Florida, in
Florida?
Cocoa Beach, NASA, where NASA
Okay.
takes off at Cape Canaveral, Cocoa Beach.
Right.
East of Orlando.
Mm-hmm. Do you get to see the launches?
Yeah, I do all the time. Humongous, all the time. Every time I see them, I see these stars that hit them and stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, all the time. You can see them bright as day. When the rocket goes up, you see this thing go, these stars that always are hitting them.
What do you mean?
So I explain it. Yeah, when the rocket's going off.
Yeah.
You can see, and every time it always happens, I always show people. I'm like, oh, watch this. You're gonna see all these stars come down and just start going boom. Another one will go boom, 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 and as it's going up, or you can see it flying from way over here.
Wow.
Yes.
Huh. That is very neat.
Well,
then I guess you get to see a spectacular view, you know, and experience. Well, I'll let you go. You have a good afternoon and enjoy the rest of your day.
You as well, brother.